Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lopita, the event organizer of Conferencia Worlds. I welcome and thank you all for participating in the webinar on digital transformation and customer experience. Conferencia Worlds is a professional conference and event organizer, and we aim to empower our clients with up-to-date information for the future growth and development within their respective industries. So today we are more than happy to have Kris from ArcelorMittal as our speaker for the digital transformation leading to CO2 emission and global warming. So Kris is the digital transformation lead at the global R&D, ArcelorMittal, the world's largest steel manufacturer. Kris is actively contributing to maximize value technology to bring to its operations and innovation. In the last 25 years, Kris held various roles in international corporations like Electronic Data System and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. He also contributed to non-profit organizations as director and board members. Kris is passionate about technology and its role in transforming organizations and people's lives. And in 2018, he has started his PhD research, which is as well related to digital transformation and digital maturity with the University of Oviedo in Spain. So we welcome Kris here, and I would request Kris as well to upload the presentation in the chat option, which is here in the file option below, and we would be recording your presentation as well. So let us start. We welcome you. So here you have Kris sharing his screen, and you can start.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lopita, and thank you the whole bunch of organizers who made it happen. I know that this is not how we planned it, but hey ho, we are here. And I don't know how many people participate in this discussion, but whoever is here, I just wanted to say a big thank you for making it and appreciate your time, and I will try to make it worthwhile. I hope you can see my screen, and I will just guide you through some sort of a journey. I would like to start to talk about a little bit about what is digital transformation and how it leads to the industry 4.0, and then how it impacts the greenhouse gases emission. What can we do in both our professional and personal lives to impact it in a positive way. So as I said, this is not how I imagined our meeting and interaction, and when back in December, I was asked to present and discuss with you this digital transformation and CO2 emissions. I thought that probably the future climate change is possibly the biggest challenge humanity faces in years to come. Look how reality make me rethink that. So we should be here in person, having an opportunity to interact, to discuss and change opinions. But instead, we all forced to use technology again and again to keep the business going. So before I move on, I really feel that I would like to pay my highest respect to those who cannot use technology and are basically responsible for keeping our lives going. The bus drivers, waste collectors, doctors, nurses, operators of our power plants, or the entire infrastructure, the food producers, the delivery drivers, shop assistants, and many others. Without them, we would not be able to operate, and in many cases would not even be able to be here today. And we are kind of tend to glorify the technologies and technology corporations, but sometimes we forget about the basic services that make their existence possible. So I think we owe them a lot. I believe, however, that the strange times of COVID will pass, and we will be able to come back to our new normal. And I know I'm sure that topics I wanted to briefly touch today with you will come back even strongly. So why not sparking a short reflection on digital transformation and CO2 emissions? It's the topic which is very close to my heart, and I want to share my thoughts, some facts and figures that might influence our thinking about the technological necessities, priorities and choices when we use, plan and execute our digital transformations, but also touching our daily lives. I think we rarely think of the impact of sending an email, of streaming a movie, or training in artificial intelligence algorithms in terms of how they influence the environment. So today I would like to take you on a short journey that starts with reminding ourselves what is digital transformation and how it leads to fourth industrial revolution, and maybe then a short reflection on our attitude towards it, both in our business and professional lives. So to start this journey, let's just maybe step back a little bit and remind ourselves what digital transformation, maybe overall transformation, what is it? So transformation, in very short, is a fundamental change. In case of a company or organization, it basically cuts through many, many aspects, forcing strategies to change and shift, organizations to reinvent, re-engineer themselves. And in many cases, it also shifts the power as well. And if we build on that, I think it is safe to call a digital transformation a process of adoption to a new digital landscape in order to meet the shifting expectations of customers, employees, and partners. And one thing I wanted to kind of underline is the ongoing aspect of the digital transformation, this kind of ever-changing element of adopting new technologies in the way that enriches the organization and secures its long-term prosperity. It is not a finished process, as we all know, yeah, planned today to end in 2 years. It's basically constant planning and replanning and to adapt to the fast changing market conditions. Well, I can give you one example from last week's, and it's the case of our 3D printing labs. On a daily basis, they produce some daily items for the steel making facilities. But recently, they are producing face masks and shields, providing support to government, local authorities and communities. And as a result, we built an excellent relationship with those entities that we've never worked before, schools, hospitals, councils. And I'm pretty convinced that there is some sort of good which will come out of it in the long term. But could we plan for it? Absolutely not. But being able to do the very thing of changing the way we work is what I mean agile and ongoing adaptation. So I will not be probably saying anything new when I state that the digital transformation touches both business and personal lives, and in business domain to reshape the customer value propositions and transform operations using digital transformation and digital technologies. Companies are tackling various dimensions of digital transformation. Yeah? In many cases, we're talking about technology, but we know very well that it's not only the part of it. We've all experienced it, yeah, the best technology, but no willingness to use it and apply it makes it useless and takes a lot of effort and time first to realize that people, culture, strategy, I don't know, operations, facilities, customers, all other elements of the puzzle need to come together for making this digital transformation a success. And we know ourselves very well, yeah, especially when it comes to things proposed by the others. We tend to resist change. And I put this little picture here, which makes it obvious. Yeah, we resist change. We cannot think outside of the box, whilst we could just put the normal round wheels there and carry out 10 times faster. Right, so let's just take a very quick look at the personal experience, because it goes probably even deeper. Because the arrival of the smartphones with mobile internet transformed the way people work, communicate, and consume information. Today, there is app for everything. The phone adoption has been exponential and had impact on deployment of new sensors, spinning from 10 million in 2007, I think, to over 15 billion or more now. And these sensors enabled the Internet of Things, converting objects, physical attributes into digital data. And we remember some years ago, we had a set of buzzwords and hypes, like, everybody was talking about just in time. Everybody was talking about lean, Six Sigma, agile. I don't know what else, total quality management. And today, no one day passes without hearing about IoT, big data, IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, blockchain, and many, many others that are appearing from every direction, complementing what was already developed and leading to this whole new world of the fourth industrial revolution. And I hope we all agree that the Industry 4.0 could be summarized by the following equation. We take a bit of digital transformation and mix it with interconnectivity and new manufacturing technologies, and we get new business models, sustainable and efficient use of resources, and cost-effective production of customizable products. And I think the interesting bit is the sustainable and efficient use of resources. That's something which I wanted to touch a little bit today. So, do you think maybe that we take our digital world for granted? We used to have access to information in real time, always on phones, laptops, tablets, instant use, total and utter control. But sometimes I think it's good to pause and think about the march of technologies and what sort of consequences it has. For example, 90% of world's data was created in the last 2 years. Can you imagine that? 90% of world's data, and humanity spans for thousands of years, but only last 2 years generated 90% of world's data. And it is estimated that an average person on the planet will generate over 2 megabytes of data per second. And now if we look at different sectors, manufacturing, transportation, building, packaging, retail, they're all going through their respective digital transformation, connecting IT and OT with all the sensors and transmitting data to the cloud, to the edge, here and back, both sides. And this kind of insatiable human appetite for more data transmission is driving the need for more data centers, where most of the data would be hosted. That also requires more transmission networks, more capacity, more speed. So, firstly, let's imagine the amount of electrical energy required to power it. I mean, globally, it's really a lot. To power those, all the amounts of data that all are connected, that will be generating, transmitting, consuming, storing, analyzing, retrieving and retransmitting and so on. It is really, really a massive, massive amount of electricity. And secondly, of course, it comes with carbon dioxide emissions generated by just sheer power requirements from all this landscape of devices with sensing, processing, communication capabilities. If you add also the production of those devices, if you add the life cycle and power and disposal to it, an impact starts getting shape in our heads, I hope. So let me bring to your attention some facts and figures that not everybody might be aware of. So basically, 4% of greenhouse gases is generated by ICT globally, 4%. Now, if you think about it, it's really unimaginable, because if you compare it with the whole aviation industry throughout the globe, it generates 2.5% of greenhouse gases. We estimate that that ICT, the international information and communication technology, generates 4%. So if we look at it, world basically data centers use more than overall Britain total electricity consumption. So it's about 420 terawatt hours, and UK is using 300 terawatt hours. And it's also estimated that by 2040, storing digital data is set to create 14% of world's emissions, around the same proportion as US does today. Quite sobering statistics, if you think about it. Very similar. If you look at the email, for example, 1 megabyte email, and it's not a big one, as you know, yeah? during its total life cycle emits about 20 grams of CO2. And 20 grams of CO2 is the equivalent of an old 60-watt lamp if you lit it for 25 minutes. If you take 20 of those emails per day per user over 1 year, then we create the same CO2 emissions as a car traveling 1,000 kilometers. It's very similar when we take a selfie. It is estimated it generates also about 20 grams of CO2. And I must admit that since I found out that I'm really thinking twice when I'm taking a picture and sharing it with WhatsApp or any other digital channel, and sometimes I catch myself forgetting about it, and makes me feel guilty when I remind myself about the digital consequences of this digital technology. Another area which gained a lot of traction over last years is online streaming. So basically, just two channels, Netflix and YouTube, produced 306 million tons of CO2 in 2018. And would you guess how much is that? It's as much as Spain as entire country. Another interesting fact is that training a single artificial intelligence model can emit as much carbon as 5 cars in their lifetimes. There's been a study by MIT which shocked me actually, and I thought I would share it with you here. Well, here I would like to mention that so far I said it might sound a bit catastrophic, so it would be fair to mention 2 aspects of digitalization influencing CO2. So the one I mentioned so far is called the direct one. So basically, this is the CO2 for which the responsibility lies in production of ICT hardware, of running it and its disposal. So this is the direct effects of ICT. So if we think about it, digitalization calls for increased amount of IT hardware, more power to power it, and also, of course, generating more effort in terms of recycling and disposal. There is, however, an indirect effect of the ICT, which is generated in other domains by applying the technologies. For example, it's pretty obvious. We're working from home. We are here now, and we cut CO2 from travel. We stream, but we don't use CDs and DVDs. We read articles. We don't print paper. We don't cut trees, and so on and so forth. And there are several studies that claim that the indirect effects will significantly reduce overall emissions, going through all the spectrum to the point that some claim that positive effects of indirect will be cancelled by negative effects. So basically, some studies say, oh, that's really ICT will cut significantly, and some others say, in fact, it's not going to cut those emissions because the amount of devices and the requirement for power is actually offsetting the benefits. I even heard that some technology companies claim that they will become CO2 negative because of the effect of their products apply in various domains. I would say, try to calculate this today. It's more the marketing part of it than anything. So as you see, I put on this screen, the kind of obvious desire. We want to store, share, generate, digitize more processes faster. So it leads to the big question, which I think we should really ask ourselves, is how do we manage all those contradicting realities? So work smarter, faster, share more data, but cut the CO2. And the answer, well, to be very honest, I do not know. I don't know how to manage it, but I wanted to share some thoughts. So the first element I'm thinking of is to embrace the new culture. So for culture, I think it would be a lot to do with educating ourselves and initiate an open and honest discussion to raise people awareness. A little bit like, you know, some years ago we had turn the tap off when you brush your teeth to save water. It's now so normal, but it wasn't years ago. So if we think about the culture and education, we should really first think before we blindly apply new technology. Do we really need the new phone every 2 years? Do we need to be always online? Do we need to print every time we want to print? Maybe what we could do also is to, I don't know, reduce the size of the document you send by email. Or do not attach every time you send the full document, but use the hypertext links. Don't spread the chain mails, you know, hoaxes, gossips. Delete emails regularly. Sometimes we keep them for too long, and you know, unsubscribe from the newsletters. We're getting annoyed when we get the newsletters automatic notifications, but we could unsubscribe from them, generate less traffic. If we know the address of the website, why don't we just enter it rather than put it in Google and generate traffic in the search engine? And yeah, so there is several things like I'm just thinking here, optimize the smartphone so it closes some applications and they don't run in the background. So they basically release the space and generate more power and less need for charging. Another point which I think is worth mentioning is we need to support a little bit more research, so we know not only debate between what is the impact between direct and indirect effects of digitalization, but to find out and select those areas which we can prioritize, where we benefit first and we benefit most, and get them to the top of our agenda. Of course, we design and produce more CO2 efficient hardware, but also, as I said before, do we need to swap the phone every 2 years? It comes with a certain CO2 footprint. And there is also many other areas like innovation related underwater data center. You know, there is a project NATIC by Microsoft, which basically sunk a data center at the coast of Scotland, which is powered by wind turbines, and it's supposed to be there for about 5 years without any maintenance. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the answer to this big question. You know, how we manage it going forward. I think we start with ourselves, looking at those simple things. But you know, if we take it at scale, we will make a difference here. Now, before I wrap up and open it for questions and answers, this discussion, I just wanted to briefly share with you the concept of digital maturity. This could be really a good help when we go alongside the digital transformation journey, especially for those organizations which look for a systematic and practical approach. So let me just tell you a little bit about that. It's part of my research, and I really, you know, could talk about it for hours, but I don't want to bore you with it. Just on a high level, so maturity, as everybody knows, refers to being mature, achieving certain desired attributes or state. So it's some sort of evolutionary process of growth from initial start to the end state of being fully developed. So the purpose is basically of maturity model is to define current state. So if you look at the inside curve, the blue one, it's the, let's say, the hypothetical current state of my organization. But I can also define the future, more mature stage, which is the gray line outside of it. So those are the areas where I want to put my effort going forward. And it depends, you know, what sort of organization I am, where am I going to get benefits quickest, and so on. So, and also the part of the digital maturity model is the knowledge about the attributes it must attain to reach the next future state. So it is really a good place to start. There are several digital maturity models which are on the market. I think it doesn't really matter which one we apply or which part of the maturity model we apply, as long as it's, you know, eliminating our blind spots. In many cases, we are using, you know, our experience from the past, but we might, of course, have some blind spot and kind of miss the areas which could really help the organization. But we simply don't know about it. So it's good to use the framework. And yeah, it's good for prioritizing actions and so on. But I think the important thought I wanted to leave you with here is that, you know, as we're going alongside our digital maturity journey, let's remember to prioritize the activities in a responsible way, to try to contribute towards this bigger goal of ours, to create a sustainable living and environment for the generations after us. So with that, I just wanted to basically leave this for questions and discussion, if there are any.
Yeah, this is Michael. Can you hear me?
Hi, Michael. Yes, I can hear you very well.
Perfect. Very good presentation, Kris. I like that a lot. Actually, I'm working for BCG, Boston Consulting Group, and about 4 years ago, I invented a thing called Digital Acceleration Index. So exactly what you mentioned in your last slide, sort of a digital maturity model that we use with companies to measure where they are and where they want to be and what their aspirations should be and how they can move ahead. I'm wondering, sort of, what is your thought for this next evolution? Because right now, the rationale that we apply is very much, you know, how much sort of benefit from a business perspective digitalization generates, right? Do you see any chance to take such a maturity model and turn it into sort of a sustainability index? I mean, there's many out there, but really for companies to understand along those dimensions that you have here, there, and we have very similar ones. I found it really interesting that this is sort of a very common way of thinking, but you know, in the end, turn it into something where you can say, if you move on the maturity from level 1 to 2, right, and you apply certain levers, you have a potential of saving X, Y, Z tons of CO2. You know, doing exactly that, direct and indirect, right? Do you think something like that is feasible, sort of, to become not only a digital but a digital sustainable company?
I tell you what, Michael, that's precisely what I've been thinking of over the last couple of years. You know, I don't think it's only. I don't think it's not only feasible. I think it's a must. I think it's a must going forward. You know, if we look at the, you know, European, just look at Europe, you know, and our kind of emission targets going forward. Sustainability, you know, social responsibility, all those parts that we need to embed it into our digital maturity models. And look what we have on the market. We've got none of them with it.
Yes.
You know, I'm actually looking at this very point. And by the way, for everybody here on the call, I'm really open to have a separate discussion on that. But I'm trying to build a digital maturity model for research and development organization, because there is there is, you know, a lot of them for industry, for engineering companies, but for R&D, there isn't one, and it's very, very specific. And what I'm trying to do is exactly what you mentioned, Michael. Try to put the sustainability part in it and try to gauge if I move into, let's say, I don't know, connected things that will generate. It doesn't even need to be quantified, but at least if I have a feel, the qualitative, you know, at this point in time. So this is the more or less. I think we need to do it. We need to do it.
I think we should connect separately on that, because I really like that idea. The only so we've been building that tool very similar to you and you know, and your approach, and I think there's various, you know, aspects to that. Like, one is sort of the tech side of things, but the human side is equally important, right? And then when you think about the third angle, which is sort of the business, the processes, the go-to-market, all of those activities that a company does in terms of processes, right? And I think all those three lenses, if you look at them separately, have huge potential, right? I think the true power, though, I'm with you, even if you do that from a narrative perspective, more qualitatively, but the true power comes really, and that is an industry-specific discussion. I think it cannot be agnostic. I mean, in some of those elements may be agnostic when you talk about people, but it is very industry-specific when you talk about an insurance company and what they will do versus a heavy machinery, engineering company. But nevertheless, though, if you had some sort of guidance and you could build that into something that quantifies impact, I think that would be fantastic, and would be also sort of, I think, going forward a discussion for companies, because I mean, if you transform, and we're seeing that right now, from this, as you mentioned, 90% in the last 2 years, if you see that transformation, every transformation now will become a digital transformation, with in some aspect. But I think every transformation that is a digital transformation should also be a digital sustainable transformation, as in my view, this is a competitive advantage, right? So you make yourself, if you look at countries like Sweden, if you look at, other companies that are really going CO2 neutral, you make yourself in a way independent from what we see right now at the oil market, right? Or other turbulences, right? So it is in itself a competitive advantage that has not been sort of looked at it very thoroughly and structurally, I think, over the past years. As it's like the automobile, right? In the 1910s or around the 20th century, they were very ineffective. They put out a lot of CO2, and then someone came and made it more efficient, and with that had a competitive advantage over in consumption and in other things, right? So I think this discussion can be very much also an economic one, not
Absolutely.
only
Absolutely. And they could also, not only through, let's say, the business part, even probably you can gain a competitive advantage in the consumer side. If you start selling a new smartphone and you say, by the way, it generates 20% less CO2 than the others, it will definitely drive the customer behavior. Because and the generation which is coming after us, I'm in my 50s, so the generation it's probably much more environmentally conscious, and it will become more and more important, to be able to do that. Even within my industry, we're looking at what we call the responsible steel, and we try to to do whatever we can to kind of produce the products which are attractive from the sustainability perspective, and that's why, sorry.
No, that labeling is super interesting. And like you said, I think for every industry, that will be an aspect, from a sustainable, we just launched a loan with a big bank in Spain where sort of the interest rates are adjusted according to the digitalization journey of that company. And there's sustainability loans out there as well that, as simple as a bank product, right, being tied to incentives that are, sustainable, right? And things like that sell very well. So I think there is a huge market for that. I have another question, and that's really driving me, because I wanted to say that asked that at the beginning. Do you see that direct consumption, right? I mean, right now, if we all send an email, it doesn't cost anything, right? So the additional costs are almost zero, while it still creates 20 grams of CO2, right? And at the same time, around the world, we have computers that are idling, right? And when you look at data centers, they become more efficient, but honestly, there's also companies that resurface a huge space of, disk, hardware, whatever pieces, but never really utilize it to, working in a bank, I've seen really, there's a batch at night that uses the whole hardware of 99% for 3 hours, and the rest of the day they do literally nothing. So with that said, do we also, maybe like with the hunger in the world and all those other phenomena, have a problem of usage, right? Efficient usage, rather than, is that the first and biggest lever that we should pull using capacity in a more efficient way.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and it's somehow I would say it's connected to the old ways of thinking. You know, I have to buy this hardware and it have to last next 4 years until it's fully depreciated. And you know, when I was working at Hewlett Packard, you know, we had it all the time. Yeah, instead of buying capacity when it's needed, people were buying this hardware. And I run a couple of studies, and after a year and a half of usage of this hardware, we found out that, you know, storage was 10% of the capacity.
Yeah.
CPU was utilized at 2%. You know it. So I think even such a simple move like moving to the cloud and you know, have this on your roadmap at least.
Yeah.
It would really help with the sustainability.
And do you thinking that forward, right? I mean, if you look at, you come from the steel industry, so something that's very close to the heart of every government, and looking into the energy industry, which is usually something that's very much state influenced, do you think we'll see the day where the governments of this world just say, Google, you're now state owned because it's a life necessity to access data, and we need to ensure sort of, you know, simple example, you know, that every country is now launching a COVID app, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if, you know, the Amazons of this world just saying, hey, you know what, this is now costing XYZ dollar, you know? So right now they're not doing it for all the good reasons, but you know, I see a point in the future where governments actually actively pursue, you know, data accessibility and availability as a sort of part of a human right, or is that maybe, and with that needs to be protected, and you know, we see the data privacy movements in the EU and so on and so forth. This is all kind of channeling towards that target state, right? Of
very, you know, a very interesting perspective, and I see your point, and I think that could happen. It would be probably, you know, if you think about it in the way, okay, data is the new oil, and obviously we've got some oil companies which are owned by states, you know, and there are some private ones. So it might not be that, you know, it will be entirely transformed, but it is not impossible for the future, you know, to have some of those mega companies which are driving, you know, the markets and everything to be really state owned. Yeah, for those very reasons you mentioned.
That's a super interesting discussion, but I let others ask questions too. Sorry for
No, thank you. And you know, I would be delighted to have a further conversation with you, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Let's connect over LinkedIn and exchange some thoughts. I love that.
Thank you.
Okay, so guys, do you have any more questions? And if there's any more questions, you can write to me and I can email to Kris and he can answer it later on. Or you can just directly get connected with Kris.
Yes, I will be delighted.
Okay, so thank you so much. It was a pleasure hearing about so much about this presentation and getting connected to you all in this bizarre situation as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. And tomorrow we will have our webinar as well. And tomorrow at 12 GMT, if you guys would like to join, you can as well join us. Tomorrow we have on customer service and managing innovations. So tomorrow we have 2 sessions at 12 o'clock GMT and 3 p.m. GMT. So looking forward, guys. Take care and have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kris. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.